Very well. So, if you have any questions, concerns, please write it in the chat. Or someone read it to me, like Talos, because I may not see it. You're my assistant. I'm sorry you're sleepy. Okay. So, wonderful. Very well. So, what I wanted to focus on today is basics and fundamentals. I know that when most of you joined this group, I heard that most people were interested in, let me tone this background so I don't make anyone blind. I know that most people were very interested in revisiting basics and fundamentals, which is very valid because it's mostly the thing that keeps you back. When I see artists that are struggling with their technique or the development of their technique, or they're frustrated, usually they could use going back to the fundamentals and going back to the basics. Going back is sort of a broad term because I know that for a lot of self-taught people, and I'm self-taught myself, we never had a strong academic formation in which some things were properly either explained or we were forced to sit down and understand the concept of volume, for example. And for some people that's great because that's not their cup of tea. And it is also my wish that we can put the fun back in fundamentals, because you don't have to draw a still life to understand the relationships between volume and shape. It works. It's worked for artists for hundreds of years, but I think that the same lessons can be learned doing something that is maybe more interesting to you as a person instead of drawing oranges and bananas, especially mindlessly. I particularly find that mindless practice is usually not good practice, and for a lot of people who struggle particularly with their art and where they're currently at, their improvement and their lack of improvement, it's usually, I find, because you take that advice that every good artist gives you, which is practice, which is correct. But if you keep drawing without any fresh input, you end up copying yourself over and over and over, and you end up distilling yourself into your own either mistakes or you grow stale. Because if nothing's coming in from outside, then there are not many ways to improve if you're just sitting with your own pool of knowledge and just toying with it. At least at a certain point. I think that beginners definitely can idly sort of toil away with drawing because they're strengthening their line knowledge and their muscles and their eye muscle. But for people that are a little more seasoned, it can be counterproductive to go in circles. And The main lesson the main takeaway that I want everyone to sort of acquire after this is that basics and fundamentals are basic and fundamental. They're not easy. Fundamental comes from the word foundation. Basic comes from the word base. So everything you build on top requires a solid knowledge of fundamentals and basis. It's not easy. In fact, it's so required, and some of these concepts are so complex that it is required for artists to go over and over, to go back to them through their entire career, just like revisiting concepts, because sometimes you forget yourself. Especially some bird's eye view concepts like composition or shape. So today I am not going to focus on all of the fundamentals. I am going to focus on a few of them, because you could have endless classes about every single one of these. But what I want to focus on today is basically, I want to focus on line. I want to focus on shape. And I want to focus on volume. And as an extra, if we're feeling really spicy, and this may come in when we're talking about line and shape, something that I think should be named as a fundamental is rhythm. I don't know how to spell rhythm, so I will say it in Spanish. Rhythm. It has too many H's everywhere. So line, shape, volume, rhythm. Of course, I am going to be talking about general things that may or may not apply to you. Take what you wish, and what you don't like, don't take. When we're talking about line, it is somewhat important to me that artists are not using a type of line or a size of line or a texture of line that's working against them. I am a very big proponent of loose, flowy, big lines. You can refine later. You can build on top of another layer. I certainly feel that when you're working with lines, if you start with too small of a brush, you may stiffen yourself. And stiffness, even in work that is supposed to be stiff, like if you're emulating a style that's supposed to be stiff, it's not. It should be a conscious choice rather than you're stiff because you can't let loose. I am particularly a very stiff person, so what I really like to do when I start my drawing day is I like to take a big brush. I'm a big textured brush kind of artist. I think it makes everything flowy. It reminds me of like my traditional roots that I really like. You can do this with any brush or whatever brush that you use. Harder brushes, non-textured brushes, are much less forgiving. So do take that into account. What I will usually start my day with is, and this is pretty much something that a lot of people do, warm-up sketches. And usually a warm-up sketch will make sure that you're like psychologically inclined to make big sweeping lines, and that it's not threatening, and also of course it warms up your drawing hand. But if you start the day by by just, doodling on a canvas. And doing all sorts of shapes and all sorts of angles. This looks very like primary school, or it sounds like mumbo jumbo, but it will take the filling of a page, that daunting nature of filling a page, and it will take it away, and you will be primed to bigger and bolder strokes. If I were now to study a figure now, I am way more likely to use bigger and bolder strokes that contain, like the entire page. If I were to play with some rhythm, I already have some looseness that was awarded to me by just having a page full of scribbles. And also, it takes a lot of pressure out. The first thing that you put on a page doesn't have to be a masterpiece, doesn't have to be tidy, doesn't have to be tight, doesn't have to be anything. And a lot of art problems are mental problems in the sense that it's an issue with like the way you're thinking about it. And this also it's something that I also see in other fields. It's something that also happens in like performance and music, like the way you are approaching it mentally maybe what's like holding you back. So notice that I don't, when I practice my line work, I like to go sweeping. I don't erase. I don't care about mistakes. All I care about is getting a fluid line. In fact, you can have this and then erase it. Getting a fluid line that's confident. And then when you have a fluid line that's confident, you can start to play with the line weight and the line thickness. This particular brush does not have line weight. Let me see. But if I use a different kind of brush, I can play with line weight. And just starting with something that isn't a figure or isn't a face or isn't a body, or it doesn't have to be anything, because you just like a warm-up for someone who does sports, you need to free the preconceived notion that you're gonna do something, because then you're already trapped in how should this face look, how should this head look, how should anything look. And it's also very good as a warm-up. You can doodle very tight, you can doodle very wide, you can break your doodles. I know that a lot of artists do this, and a lot of artists that are like really good just like swear by just making shapes on paper. And I like to keep my brush, as you see, the way that I personally keep my brush, I usually use the biggest size possible, and I control the smaller sizes with very, very light pressure. I never want to, and I never want you to, because of medical reasons, not medical advice, allegedly, to be pressing down in order to get a thick line. I don't want that. It engages the type of muscles that, and it engages the sort of position in your hand that stiffens the line. You can see those lines, they're super stiff. You could achieve that with a monoliner with putting no pressure on your wrist. And also you can carpet tunnel yourself. Don't do this. Like if you're heavy-handed and you're using Procreate, I don't remember exactly where, but there in preferences there is I think in pressure and smoothing, I don't remember, I will tell you later, there is a way to change the sensibility of the screen. I would rather you do your lines with a very sensitive tablet so that you can have a very light touch. And also, talking about lines, some art teachers may really disagree with what I'm about to say, but considering most digital artists are gonna be drawing on a tablet that is on a desk, and I also know this from having done technical drawing. Naturally, when it comes to drawing a line, you have if you're left-handed, this is gonna be the opposite, right? But naturally, when you're drawing a line, you're gonna have an angle and a curve that is the easiest, most confident line that you can achieve, and it's usually sort of like a 45. It looks something like that. Is a hidden layer. Looks something like this. Should look something like that. Like that's like the easiest way to draw a line. Like maybe if you have to draw this curve, then you're drawing from a tighter place, and you have less control. Traditional artists that work on easels definitely want you to, when you draw, not tilt your canvas and just learn to draw with this in these very hard angles. But that's also because traditional artists can, and if you look at my camera right now, you can use the entire motion of your shoulder or the entire motion of your elbow. Usually you want, and this is easier if you're not working on a tiny ass tablet, that you work with the motion of your body. So it is way easier to sort of like trace down a line when you're using your entire body to stabilize the motion, and it is way easier to well, I mean, for me, it's way easier to get like a more planned gesture that is sort of accurate and beautiful and whatever when you're working like arm's length from your canvas. But when you're working really close, and for me particularly because I work on an iPad, so it's a flat surface, if you can get like a more angled surface, that's better for your wrist. And sometimes you can't even get your elbow on the table that you're working on. You mostly wanna use your elbow as a hinge, because of course you can't use the shoulder from here unless your elbow is free floating. So most old-timey traditional artists will tell you, don't tilt the canvas, work with what you have. And I think while it's good to have that practice, if you're inking something and you need the line to be sort of like precise, and if you're in a timeline and you're working on a commission or whatever, and you have to like line something, tilt your canvas and use your most natural best line. I would say not for everything, but for like lining that has to be very precise, it's your best bet to like not want to let's say run away from your country and never be seen again. So there's a lot of theory online, online and online. Very different types of lines. You should definitely decide on what works with you and your particular body disposition. For example, I'm a very tight person, so in order to sort of fight against that, because I like very airy, loose looking art, I use big and sort of like buttery textured brushes. And like, consider if you're a person that maybe has a tremor, or you need more support, you may want to use a stabilizer on your line work. But I would say, when you're sketching, I would be a very big proponent of keeping the sketches loose, not using a stabilizer while you sketch, because the important life of the sketch is that you keep it loose and free-flowing. It is literally the part of the art where you breathe the life into it and the movement. So, for example, I have here. When I look at animation, old animation, new animation, whatever. When I look at animation, and this is Glenn Keane, this particular artist that you see. He's the artist for the main character artist for Tarzan. I think for the Beast it's Aaron Blaze, but I could be bullshitting you. You can see here just the quick and loose nature of the strokes, and the way that the stroke just envelops the shape. Even though this is line work and this is line, the artist is very much thinking about how the line can best convey the shape. And the shape is subject to the volume, so that is also something that I will touch on later. As you see, these sketches, especially for animation, very loose, very quick. Look at like sort of like the mess on Tarzan's back and this one, because it's the gesture that they want to capture. Animation, it's moving, so it's that like gesture, that like gymnastic movement, and also something that if we get to touch on rhythm is very interesting, is that all of the shapes that are being used right now flow into each other, and the flow into each other is the concept of rhythm. For a lot of people, rhythm is really hard, and once you understand rhythm, gesture drawing is super easy. Basically, in life, a lot of shapes lead into each other, and a lot of lines. Considering that I'm talking about lines now, a lot of lines just bleed into each other, and if you're able to modify your drawing to get all of these lines to make a certain sense within the artwork, then the artwork is gonna look very flowy and very successful. So I am gonna talk a little bit about rhythm here. Rhythm is, as I told a student last week, I think of rhythm as the invisible lines underlaying like shapes, and underneath, that flow into each other and connect features and shapes and planes and lines. Not everything has like rhythm. Not everything has rhythm, and the example would be if you have something that is machined, or if you have something that is not a non-organic material. It will usually not have rhythm. However, you can, as an artist, in certain stylizations, apply rhythm to things that are very rigid. In fact, usually it's good to apply when you're drawing like an object and it's looking pretty stiff, or maybe a building. You know when artists do those like sort of crooked depictions of like Halloween houses, and they're like crooked this way and that way, and it's very pleasing. They are adding rhythm to something that doesn't have it, and that usually breathes a certain life into the object. And rhythm is also connected with something that is very well known in art, which is the line of action. The line of action is like the main line, usually a curve, that in this case would be a sweeping C curve that is very well described by the cape. It's like the main line that moves that sort of like moves the subject, and the rhythm is the relationship between these lines, and they often flow into each other or contrapose each other in ways that you will be able to sort out yourself. When we talk about shapes, I'm going to talk about that, because it's something that you sort of have to learn to see by drawing and looking at art and looking at shape. Animators are very good at this. For example, if you see the shape of the underneath of the jaw that may not be anatomically correct, but it flows into itself, and it with the rest of the face, it makes a shape that is pleasing. Same thing with the hair here. The same, there's that when there's that sharp part of the hair that is sticking, and then it becomes a curve rather sharply. Those kind of angles are rhythm, and usually expressed in very good line work. So I urge everyone to look at especially older animation, because it depends on the how far along the development is in animation, but you can also see it here, but it's a lot more tame, and there's a fine balance between beautiful motion and clean line work, and that is something that like you need to understand, that the cleaner your line work is, it will get stiffer. And there are ways to combat that, but not that many. There was a meme on Twitter a little while ago where someone was like, why did I lose all of the stiffness from the and it's a recurring theme, right? When I go from the sketch to the lines, I lose all of the life. Yeah, because you're using a stiffer line. And a lot of people were like, well, if you lined with the mind of a sketch, like if you kept that roughness in some of the spaces, that is what would breathe more life into your line work. The tighter the line work is, you will lose some of that looseness, and it will naturally become stiff. We were talking a little bit with Talos about Witch Hat Atelier, I think it's called, and how the artist, I don't remember the name, the artist keeps her art very flowy, and even though it's like ink, it's pretty like flowy and somewhat non-stiff. But if you look at the nature of her lines, she breaks them up. She goes outside of the boundaries of what would be like a traditional like ink. So if you're inking and it looks very stiff, let your hair down. Like make friends with imperfections, or turn the imperfections into charm, I would say. So for example, these are stills that are very, very beautiful from the Prince of Egypt. Has incredible like art. Most of old Disney movies, like Tarzan or Mulan, or you know, that the 90s, the golden era of Disney movies, they had incredible like art direction, and that's definitely died. This is not Disney, this is DreamWorks. DreamWorks, get a pass. I love you, DreamWorks. Also, this movie came out the same year as Shrek, and that is why no one saw it. And it makes me very sad because it's a beautiful movie. In fact, there's like a funny thing, which is like when animators didn't perform while working on the Prince of Egypt, they were sent to work on Shrek as a punishment, which I think is really funny, considering. But anyway, this movie is a masterpiece. If you haven't seen it, go see it. That's homework. Also, more delightful sketches from, yes, this is a screenshot from Pinterest, from Glenn Keane. More of this, and here you can see the sweeping line, right? The strong sweeping line. And you will see specifically that there are places where some people are like, okay, where should I thicken my line work? Where should I make the line weight more apparent? And sometimes you have to feel it. There is a very good book that I think everyone should read, which is Force by, I think it's Mike Matesi. I will let you know. Incredible book. I think everyone should read it. He talks about line and line weight, and I think some people work with line weight in a way that is like almost artificial, and you can see that line weight here is working towards the tensions in the movement and the shape. So you have, she is sort of like lifting her arm, so the tension is in the shoulder in this movement. So they used a thicker line to depict that. You have like this very strong curve that serves the composition, where her back joins her. I'm talking about Auntie Ethel, and that's also a very powerful line. The weight of the movement dictates a lot of times the weight of the line work. Let me see if I have more examples of that. Like here in this, this is a little bit more like manufactured, but like the tension in that big sweeping line for the hip, that sort of corner, and here of course, like here with the beast, you have like the tension in his shoulders, and then that's like a very strong line, very bold. And then maybe a detail that is less important, like the colors of the shirt, the little flappies of the shirt. it describes the form, but it's less, it's secondary. So the line work isn't as present there. And then in the shapes that connect from his brow to the cheekbone, to the nose, and then to the beard, extremely important to show the volume and the shape and the gesture of the face. So all of it's like they threw everything on it. All of the lines, all of the line work, a presence is there, and that is very much, I think, very useful to do observation. Where do I place my thickest line? Let me go back to where do I place my thickest line? Let's say you have a little model. Always plant your figures. Just always plant your figures. It's called, I don't remember, like a lead weight. In Spanish we say plomada, like a plumb. You know when you have those fishing weights that have like a lead weight at the bottom, and it's not necessarily for fishing, but like when you want something in old-timey days, when instead of lasers, when people wanted something to be straight, they would drop this. They had this line with a very thick lead object on it. Comes from plomo, which is like the Latin of lead, and it's a plumb or a plumb, meaning heavy, basically. And that's the way they would know that something is perfectly straight, and that has to do with like weight distribution. And usually when you have a figure, free tip, Abby's free tip of the week, when you have a figure and you want them to stand like straight and not look like they're falling either way, trace this line, and usually the center of the line will match the collarbone. And if you have that match, for example, watch me now fail at it like terribly. You have that match here, you can build like figure that is standing, and it makes sense. Of course, like contrapposto, which is the natural weight resting on one leg, and you know, as we would say, the David. I'm not gonna dwell into this now because it's insane. Contrapposto is one of the hardest things to draw. So, like, if you're having trouble planting your figures, don't worry. That's like a thing that happens all the time. But again, say you have a figure, right? And or like the top of a figure, and say it's someone lifting something above their head. So I have like the triangle for the triangle shape, and we're sort of slowly moving between line and shape right now. You have the triangle for the torso, and then you would have like the head, and they would probably be looking down, and then there would be a big object here. What I would do is, you have your big object, you know the palms are going to lie here somewhere, and the way I would connect this to make sense with the rhythm is we have like the line, the shape of the movement that is the bending of the arms, right? And then here we would have the elbows, and we would have that like powerful short muscle here of the arm pushing against, up and against. And these relationships between lines, the curve and the straight, the curve and the straight, the flow into each other, that is shape, and that is shape, and that is rhythm. Then the deltoid would probably do this. And here you would have the pecs smushing against the biceps. But in something like this, right, where you can feel the strength, the amount of the strength would probably just like be on the shoulders. So if you have to thicken a line, thicken the shoulders, thicken the top of the biceps, that they're carrying all of that weight. And then when you have the hands and you bend them a little bit, you know, because like you would have your hands here just like the palms, and then like your fingers, the tension in which the finger would sort of like grasp onto that object, you know. And then like if this person was like kneeling or something, you would have like a lot of tension like on that like one knee, and then, you know. But like you can feel when someone is like, what lines do I you know, when everyone talks about line, you can modulate your lines, you know, like you can make your lines thicker or thinner or darker or lighter, and everyone's like, why? And they're like again, that's I will tell you about the book, but you have to feel the action in the pose. And it can be like a very inactive pose, like someone can like be slouching somewhere, you know, and still you would have like the tension of the belly, and then you would have the hip just against the couch, right? And then, you know, maybe like this shoulder is like bunched up, you know, and resting on their belly, but the tension is in the shoulder that is bunched up, and then the other arm very relaxed, so we wouldn't even like pay much attention on it while drawing a gesture, while drawing the shape. And then maybe like the butt's like scoot up, and we have a leg that is up. But basically, in here we would have like a bend. So what do I darken? What do you want to, like, when you draw something, like what do you want the person that's looking at it to feel? You know, if it's action, if it's tension, if it's repose, what do you want the person that is looking at it to feel? It's not like, a lot of people are like, well, actually, basically what you can do is like you draw a face, and like the thickest part is, you know, every time you draw a curve, you do like the thick part. Just put it there, you know? It's like, yeah, like it works sometimes, but not all of the time. And again, you should be mindful of why you're making the choices that you're making, especially with fundamentals. And now we're gonna talk about line. We're gonna talk about shape, sorry. So, shape. A lot of people are like, shape, circle, shape, triangle. You know? Shape, square, whatever. Yes. Composition, yes. You can use these shapes always, everywhere. Shapes work to, yes, shape. You use it to build a, you should always, I don't want to demean these are very important. So I will give them a little bit of space. My coffee has grown cold. if you're drawing and you're not thinking about the underlying shape, the drawing that comes out will not have a strong underlying shape. So it will lack clarity. And a lot of beloved artists like Mr. Leyendecker, because he's a graphic artist that works with like ads. The shape is always very, very present in everything that he draws. So when he draws like the two people that are like holding hands, you know, and they're like both kneeling, and I think the girl has butterfly wings or something, he's thinking about that triangle. Or again, when you draw the torso, you're thinking about the triangle of the torso. Or when you're drawing the hips, you're thinking about the circle that is inside of the hip, and then about the triangle of the torso. Or when you draw the head, you're thinking about the circle that is the cranial mass, and then you divide this and you will have your eyes, and then you would have your face and other things, you know, like when you draw eyes, right? When artists draw eyes, they forget that the eyeball is just a sphere. Actually, something that's very good. I have a sphere right here. You can go out, you can buy a ping pong ball, whatever. It can be super cheap. You can draw like crosshairs or cross sections on it and just look at it, you know? Look at the way the cross section moves. And the contour of the ball just never changes, but the contour definitely does. And just like you're drawing a character, keep that ball there. And then when it's time to like draw the eye, just look at it. You know? Just think about the shape, the underlying shape. And then once you have control, and I'm sort of skimming over it because that's a lot of practice. Once you have control over these shapes, right? It's not quite a triangle. Artist who works at art doesn't know what a triangle looks like. And then you have your square, and then you have like your cylinder, and then you have your ellipse, and all of these are in 2D, right? For now, because we're not thinking about volume. Notice how different they look now that instead of like using the automatic function to draw them, I am just like sketching them. And also this is like a beautiful brush that I can definitely like tell you where I got it, so you can go support the person that made it, because honestly, like, I get so much use out of this. It's like, it was like $1, and I'm like, honestly, I don't remember exactly who made it, but I'm like, I owe you my entire life and livelihood, allegedly. No economic promises are being made right now. So when you draw, and this is why people draw still lives a lot. Like, pears are mostly shaped like a triangle, and then fruit are just a lot of different circles of different sizes. And then whenever a teacher is arranging a still life, a teacher will usually suddenly pop a like manufactured, like a candle or a jar or something that is manufactured and like straight, so that the student can understand that some things like fruit are organic, you know, with all of the little imperfections and all of the little all of the little shapes that bleed into one each other, and some things, mostly machine things, are very stiff. The thing is, most school art teachers, for example, like, God bless them, like, I have nothing against the school the school system. I had an amazing art teacher in high school, and I had a terrible art teacher in high school. I had an art teacher in high school who was like, I need you to draw like me. And she wasn't even an artist, she was an art teacher. Like, she wasn't, you know? Because, like, only a non-artist would be like, I need you to draw this like me, and, like, she would copy it on the whiteboard, and that was a little left up. And then I had this other art teacher that was, like, really cool and really helped my journey. So basically, if you're wondering why they make you draw fruit, and I hate it that they don't tell you this, which is important, is art teachers want you to realize through observation, which is usually mindless observation, because they're like, draw the fruit and then draw your own conclusions. But, like, you have to turn your brain on while you draw the fruit, right? They want you to realize by contrast that there is a composition to everything. They will usually arrange still lifes to have an interesting composition from all sides, and that there are organic shapes, and then that there are mechanic. I would call them mechanic shapes, because I did some years of product design, and usually these shapes come from something that is machined or lathed, like if you have like a vase or something that has been made by a machine, like, you have no leeway to it's like straight fucking line. You have no leeway. And basically that is what teachers want you to understand when they give you 15 still lifes. But still lifes, like, don't have to be boring, and that is something I'm venting my own frustration towards art teachers right now. But yeah, so shapes, all sorts of shapes, and not to be a little smartass here, but all of these shapes here that you have a name for, right? Like, we have an ellipse, we have a circle, a triangle, we have a rectangle that in my brain is a cylinder but in 2D, and then you have your other shapes, like you can have like a little hexagon or things like these. All of these are what's called platonic shapes. Basically, because Plato was like, there are shapes that exist in the universe and they are perfect, and you will never find them completely perfectly in nature, which boohoo, machined shapes in the future, Plato. But, well, you were all of these are called platonic shapes. And even though they're very useful, they have limitations. When you see shape language in art, they're usually going past these shapes. So again, when I showed you, and that's sort of like why I wanted people to do a little study on an animated subject, is that when you draw something and that something that you draw is composed of shapes, you can design the shape. I will explain, but I will repeat. When you're drawing something and everything is composed out of shapes, you can design the shape to be as pleasant as you want, especially if you have a looser, less realistic like style. Slightly less realistic, because like there's shape stylization in everything, honestly, except like true photorealistic art. You can and should be designing your shapes. which is something that you will mostly see in my personal work, not to like toot my own horn, when I draw hair. If I'm drawing, like, let's talk about hair for a moment, right? When I draw someone's hair is like blowing in the wind, you know, and it looks something like this, right? That you know, that's a shape. But you can design this shape because you are sort of like the master of your own art universes, you know, however you want. Because, and that is sort of like the secret to stylization. I can decide, so let's say this is the face here, right? This is the face here. I can decide exactly what shape I want here. And this takes trial and error and trial and error and trial and error. But I can choose a shape, you know, that I think is interesting, that I think flows powerfully, where the lines sort of like flow into each other in a way that, you know, I think is meaningful. Or, you know, I have like rhythm, and here's sort of like where you inject rhythm. And rhythm always has this sort of like curves going into each other, you know, like a permanent smile, or this sort of like bing bong bing, sort of like ricocheting shape. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. And you are free, artist person that is listening right now, to design the shape of whatever you want to be the shape of whatever you want. And then I will add cutouts to the hair because that is sort of like my particular style. But you can do this with anything. And suddenly, you know, I mean, I did like put little effort into that, the hair on the left, but suddenly you have a 10 times more appealing picture on the right, you know? And you can do this with any shape, basically. And that is what happened when I show you that sketch of the beast being turned back into a human. We could debate that a lot, but like when they drew the ribcage, they decided like to make it like a shape that was appealing, you know, like that's an appealing, because animators know everything about appealing shapes. That's sort of like their work. So they decided on like this very appealing, and then like the crazy curve, this like wonderful horseshoe shape that they choose for the throat, right? And a lot of things that I'm probably doing like very wrong right now. And then like they decided like the very flowing shape of the clothes, right? And then the hair that had this beautiful section that was like straight and then a sharp curve, and all of that is building a shape language. And of course you shouldn't go too crazy, and you should go about, you should consider firstly like the main motion that is happening, which is he's sort of like curved like this. But like you can today you can unlock the powerful language of shape language, the shape language of the language, to actually make your art better quick. It's not a scam. This is free. Free knowledge. Design the shape. You can do it. You don't have to stay at rigid shape. If it gets bad, hit the bricks. You can shape the shape however you want. But it's, you know, and if you look at like futuristic art, you know, or design from like the 50s when everything looked like very turbine like, that's because they were doing that. They were designing appealing shapes consumer items, and you can sort of like go ham and like think about shapes and fill a page with shapes. And this is called shape language, and it's used a lot in design. I would say all we would do in the it's called morphology in Spanish. So much that, of course, it was 3D because like it was product design, but so much in logo design, in industrial design, in graphic design, in illustration. So much has to do with constructing appealing shapes, beautiful shapes. Of course, they have to stand water. Like the anatomy has to stand water. You know, like you need a strong grasp of what is happening in order to like break the rules. You know. And if you think about it, what I'm drawing here is very similar to what we started with that warm-up page of crazy lines. So when you think about it, when you do your warm-up page of crazy lines, you're just, you know, priming yourself for more dynamic and interesting shape work, for more. And because I've drawn for a little, my lines are much more dynamic now, which is why we warm up, folks. And of course, I'm using the famous curve that is easier for me, you know. So it all ties together: shape, form, volume, shape, form, volume. Line, shape, volume. So there we go. You have basically, I tend to do this like squished like bean shapes a lot. They're useful if you look at like sketches and like design, like they work a lot. And if you look at like a design page for like your favorite character in a video game or something like that, you will see that when people design characters, they usually pick a shape, you know, like, I don't know, well, I mean, for example, if you have the copyright mouse, it's all circles, right? But it very much pays off to have a shape that repeats itself across throughout the design, and a lot of people do it like a lot of people just most of us that have drawn for a while do this subconsciously, but when you do it consciously, it's more powerful. When you have a design and the design is sort of like there is the same pattern, the same color, it ties things together, it makes it work. And you will see it a lot in character design for movies, in product design for products. You gain a different control, you know, if you repeat. It makes a more powerful and cohesive design. And I know this is not about design, but if you design and throw everything on the design and you have 1,500 different things, then you have like a sparkle dog, or not to shit on sparkle dogs, I actually think they're wonderful, or you have something that may not be as effective because it reads very busy. And unless that is something you want, again, you should be mindful with what you do, so you can sort of control the art instead of like just like crying about you know, I cry about it all the time, and it controls me all the time. But at least starting to gain some ground, you know, on what's going on. Also, something that is like very cool, and a lot of people do, is you can study something. For example, if you have like, I love when people do these as a shape study. Like I have, for some godforsaken reason, like a tube of toothpaste in front of me that sort of realistically looks like this. But like, if you like, you can push it. You can bring, you know, or like your Nendoroid or whatever is close to you, you know, and then you can push the shapes of like a regular object, and you're like, okay, that's boring. What can I do? How can I push it? How many ways can I? How can I like deconstruct the shape in a way that is cool and flows? And you will probably hate all of these, but it's making your brain work. It's making you gain control on the shape, you know? And eventually you will find something that is more successful. And this type of, I believe in iteration learning, which is you do the thing a lot of time, and then you think about it and what was successful and what was unsuccessful about the thing that you did, and then you modify parts of it, and you do it again, 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 and you think about it, you know? And you explore. And that is why, and you fill a page in like, I'm a particularly fast artist, but like in like a minute. This is why I stress that your sketch brush should be big, it should be flowy, and you should be sketching with loose pressure. Because if I use a lot, I don't even have them. I have some for my boyfriend because he particularly likes, and even the one that I give them are a pretty me, right? But if you want to do this and you start like your shape analysis and you have like a tiny brush, you know, and suddenly it's like really hard, and you're, you know, and then you get like shaky lines, and then you can't add like, it's really hard to add like the weight, and it will look like stiff and it will look complicated. So there is like a time and place for like dainty tiny art, like line work, but I would say that's like not all of the time. And if you want to, I'm of course exaggerating, although I know some people like line this thin, and that's like beautiful to me. I don't particularly, because I like this. I like the chunky, like very inspired by animation. So I made that brush bigger and immediately better. So now we're gonna talk just a little bit about a volume, because volume is an extremely complicated subject, and I don't want this has only been 3 fundamentals. There's a lot more, of course. Like there's color, there's color, shape, composition. I have it right here. Like I got it for today. Actually, this one's really really fun. Line, shape. There's value. Value has to do with form for me, which is basically, value is the entire range from light to dark in something. Form, and then space, color, and texture. Yes, and then again, this one has like principles, which is like, well, shape, line, value. This doesn't have like this is probably just for 2D art, so it doesn't talk about like volume. And then you have a lot of other things that you know, we all know about these, but they just decided to give them fancy names. So volume. Volume. Basically, volume is the space that an object takes in 3 dimensions. Like, we all understand what volume means, right? It's like, you have the ball, okay, but give it volume, and then like you use shading to maybe show the volume, or you do this thing that is, you do the cross section like this to show the volume, like the ball that I showed you earlier, right? This, if you look for this, is actually called cross contour, but I have trouble saying the word contour. So yeah. And usually cross contour is one of the easiest ways to like study depth and form and dimension. And I will show you examples, but usually by tracing lines over the imagined surface of the subject, you can get a very good idea. You know, if you imagine drawing lines over a 3D surface. And that's why I think just like having an object, you can see it very well, but like having an object and like tracing lines on it and then looking at them and watching them move, and you can do this with anything. Like I actually keep like when I have like the rolls of like kitchen paper, or I don't know how you guys call it, like if you can like draw across this and then like watch the relationships of like the ellipses, or there's a lot of art out there that already let me see if I saved some. No, this is my own art. Where? Here, for example, this person is using cross contour, shading, in order to show volume. And that is something that you can do at the drawing level. This is technical drawing. You don't have to be that technical. Just as long as you understand that the shape that you're drawing is 3D. And again, when you're using your lines, you're using your lines to envelop that shape and to show off that shape. Your drawing will probably be more successful. And then again, you have this sort of like cross contour, this time of an anatomical subject, and it of course, like, this is insane, right? Because like it's true like anatomy, but see how they have like that slice taken out, and every so often the artist even knows that it's extremely important to divide the shape into the planes. And when you hint, basically what you're doing with shading is just hinting at the planes, because shading happens because light hits the planes of the volume. So a plane is usually what I would say a plane is. It's a face. If you have a cube, you can see all of the faces, and all of the different faces will always receive a different and distinct amount of light from the light source. So when you think volume, first you need to think, before you start shading, you need to think about the planes. You need to think about like what is facing forward, what is facing to the side, what is facing back. Like in this foot, you have like that big ramp, you know, facing up. and then you have the side. Just thinking about front and side for everything you draw when you draw as a volume is immensely important. I went to a seminar from I think it was Ramon Hurtado, I don't remember, amazing artist, it was probably him. And basically all he said was, if you have like an extremely hard painting, the first thing you need to do when you start painting, like big brush, just do front and side plane of everything. Just front and side plane. And then if that front and side plane like is shifted because like the rib cage goes into the belly or something like that, you'd make those adjustments. But the importance, the super importance, is that people can read front and side, front and side, front and side, and it's like here in the knee, you have the front and then you have the side. Hello. Again, very important that when you're working with a 3D shape, the main thing that the eye looks for is front plane, side plane, or it can be front plane, side plane, and then if you're looking at something from the top, top plane. It doesn't, like, volume and shape doesn't have to be a bajillion different turns in surface that are mystical and enchanting. Basically, if you think of something as like low poly, very low poly, that is what you want to do. Just front and side of everything, from very big to small details. If you start with the small details, it's gonna be complicated. You're gonna get lost. Things are gonna look incomplete, or things tend to look incoherent. There are artists that can manage that, but it's insane. It's just, like, if you want to make life easier for yourself, like, please work from the very, very general big picture to the very, very particular little picture, because it is something everyone repeats for a reason, and it works. Like, if you're good at starting with details, you are gonna be better when you start with the general picture. I'm not saying don't go for the details. Go for the details. I love details. Like, I am actually in the process of working, like, trying to soften my details and leave them airier so things don't get too cluttered. Like, I'm not saying you can't put detail in your art. What I'm saying is, like, have a strong foundation, and on the strong foundation, if when you already know what plane you're working on, then you add those details. It's the big front and side and top, and then you add the detail. If you don't have an underlaying, this is what I think Ramon said throughout his entire class, was like, and this is what a lot of people use as a metaphor. If you don't have the underlying structure, you don't even have a cake. It's a mountain of frosting. When you do the detail, it's a mountain of frosting. Here, cross-hatching is extremely hard, and should be sort of approached with caution, because it's really hard, especially to manage not to have it look stiff. But here it's pure value, and we're not gonna get into value today. But again, you can immediately tell the top plane, right, from that top plane, from that front plane, from that bottom plane, of the jaw of this art, because like the jaw is getting the bounce light, and then you have like the top plane, which is like the forehead and the top of the cheek, and it reads this big, it reads this small, it reads. And here again, you have clearly front plane and side planes of the face. It reads this big, it reads this small, it reads. And again, when you hear some examples of like art that I particularly love, that like this is just shape, right? Like this is just planes of light. There's no detail here. It's, you know, it's beautiful. It's successful. It's extremely successful in conveying the form, and it's also extremely successful in like conveying like mood and like emotion and a lot of other things. But like in conveying the form, this is extremely successful. And you will notice no lines are being used in this process, and the volume here is only being expressed within relationships of soft edges and hard edges. When there's soft edge, it means there is like a soft incline, a soft fall away, a soft receding of the shape. When there's a hard edge between light and shadow, the shape is being interrupted by something. For example, like here, when you have that hard edge that you will always have on the side of the, you know, on the nostril against the face. The plane of the nostril and the plane of the face are perpendicular to each other, and unless it's when it's like the nostril that like faces the light, it will always have that sharp edge between the plane of the face and the receding nostril. That is always going to happen. It's always going to be a hard edge because you have the shadow against the light. And then the eyes here, I love that the roundness of like the eyeball or the eyelid, it's that soft shape, and then immediately when that soft sphere of the eyelid encounters the cheekbone, it's a harder shape because it's getting interrupted. It's like both volumes are clipping into each other. When you have that like clipping, you know, into each other, that's where the hard transition happens. And you can, of course, there's a lot of value, and here there's like color, temperature, and mood, and a bajillion things that are going on, but the volume is expressed so beautifully because there is a very good relationship between the lights and the shadows, and everything is constructed with soft edges and hard edges. If you've ever done a painting or like pick up a painting that you like, this is something that I do sometimes with my own paintings when they're getting too choppy, or if you have a drawing that you've made, blur it until everything is soft, and then pick like a brush that you used to paint, and the places that you think should use a hard contour when a volume is meeting the other volume, do that just there and try to bring the shape out like that. I promise it's a great exercise, because by keeping everything soft and just having choice little definition, it will give a lot of dimension, you know, to whatever you have. And it's also like a really fun exercise. And if you don't have art of your own, you can grab like a painting from an old master or a photograph, you know. And again, I don't know if this is from the same person. It's a very you know, a style that's pretty similar. You have those beautiful soft transitions in the sphere of the dome of the head that is mainly like that is like your platonic shape there. And then as soon as the shapes start getting smaller, you have those relationships between soft edges and hard edges. And again, front and side. Here the side is that rim light. I love rim light. God, always, like, if you want, just add rim light. You can never have too much rim light. It's like garlic. Rim light is hard garlic. Like, I don't know. Not economic advice. Add rim light to everything. It will make it better. You have your front plane, and then you have your side plane, and then the nose is so beautifully defined by that shadow on the bridge. And that is effective volume. That is effective volume. I feel like I could reach out and like touch this guy and like actually feel it. And then when it goes down to the beard, it becomes more graphic, and you can actually do this. You can become more graphic, and you can, by choice, leave the 3D space for the 2D space. Some artists do that quite a lot, but it's a choice, right? Here, like front and side, you technically only need 2 values in order to do this. And when I made everyone do the busts, sometimes the busts are only 3 values. It's like shadow, light, and highlight, and then sometimes you have bounce light. But it's so that everyone understands that, like, front and side, light and shade. You only, if you're successful with very, very little information, imagine how successful you'll be once you start adding on to that, right? And finally, I want to talk a little bit about, first, this is something that is like very beautiful. I particularly like the curve down of that shade, the curve down of the brow bone, that goes into again, it clips into what would be the sphere of the eye, and that's why you have like the crease there, and that's why you have that sharp. Of course, there's like an actual crease, right? And that is why you have like that sharpness there that conveys volume very, very effectively. And this particular here. It's right there, right? It's right there, the 3 planes, which in this case are divided by shadow, midtone, and highlight. And there is something that I want to talk about highlight to basically end the class, because like we understand midtones are the midtone, right, of a figure. It's like the local color. It's like the true nature of the object, right? And then you have the shadow, which is the place that the light doesn't hit. The midtone is the light, right? Everything but the shadow is the light. The highlight is something else. So when people talk about value, and they talk about form, and they talk about light and midtone and shadows, and we will see this more in the next installment. Highlights are not part of the light family. They're something else. They're basically a mirage created by the reflection towards our own eye. That is why when there's an object and you turn your head, the light, like if you have like my head and like you turn your head instead of like turning me, the shadows would be in the same place, because the shadows and the light are universal. But if you see the catchlight of my eye and you move from side to side, the catchlight will follow you, because the catchlight and the highlights, or the specular light, whatever, there's like a bajillion names. That little ding on like the glass, that is created by the relationship of the light bouncing from the surface of the object onto your eye, and that is dependent on you as a spectator. So there is technically 2 values, light and dark. Well, there's a million of values, but like in order to like have shape, you have light and dark, and then there's highlight, which is much more bright, and it's an entirely different thing when it comes to it doesn't really like describe the shape, it's more about like the sheen. And that would about make it for today. Thank you for your patience. Now if anyone has any questions, I would love to answer them. And I'm gonna let me see. To manage the track always gets me. So I'll be open to questions for like the last 4 minutes, and we can like chill. Also, the app that I'm using is called Visref. Shout out to Visref. I love it. You can have a lot of like references here, and the only thing that pains me, I keep all of my references here. I'm insane. I hoard them. And I just open them and like look at them when I'm like, okay, what is like something that I think is successful and beautiful, and I want to Beatrix Potter here, and I think is great, and I want to steal a little from, you know, not steal from, borrow from. Steal like an artist, guys. Great book. I call it Paintspo. And then I actually own this book as a the page is a morpho. Always useful. For I keep all of these like stashed here, and then I can look at them whenever I want, and it's good. So I hope everyone liked it. I'm a little hoarse from talking, which I'm gonna have to like definitely work on that. Because I have class tomorrow. Thank you so much for like showing up and like being here and staying through the entire thing. And if anyone used this in the background while they gamed or did something else, that is also one of the highest compliments ever. Because I love doing that myself. I have hopefully successfully like recorded the entire thing, an hour and 32 minutes, and it will probably be on my YouTube channel for anyone who couldn't make it or fell asleep or felt shy, or if anyone wants to like see it again because like I don't know, they want to just screenshot my face and like make memes or something. That's gonna be there. Thank you everyone so much for coming. Post my note page on Twitter, of course. Yeah, you have note page? You have a note page? Insane, of course, absolutely. Yeah, so basically, Stan animation. You can design your shape. No one can tell you not to. Big brush. And front plane, side plane. I would say, like the key to solving the mysteries of line, shape, rhythm, and volume. You know, like the fundamentals of like the evil axis. Little tips and tricks that are mostly like keep it simple and Oh yeah, the last thing that is very important, super important for artists, super important. The secret: have fun, enjoy. You draw to enjoy. You create to enjoy your existence. You create to process like your emotions and what happens to you as a human being. Fundamentals are hard, so like you don't have to torture yourself over any of this. Like enjoy, have fun, create. You know, don't lose your spark over sphere. Always keep that in mind. And thank you everyone so much for watching, and I will see you next seminar, question mark, whenever that may be.